Got a couple panelists coming in. Hey, folks. Thank you for joining us. We're just getting our final tech in place. And we'll give you a few minutes to be joining. I'm Dr. Jen, Christine's sister. Christine being our presenter.
Yep, I'm Christine Gunsaullus, Senior Project Manager here at Entech Engineering and also Storage Tank Queen. So I'm very excited to get a chance to present with you all today. In fact, such a special occasion.
I wish I had brought a prop like that, but I don't know what's appropriate for a moderator to wear. So I think that's appropriate for a speaker to wear there, Teen.
Cool.
Teen, as we're waiting for folks to log in here. Oh, we got a whole bunch of folks already. Yay.
Wow, yeah.
Awesome. We're already at 26 folks. Okay, you're in I'm in San Diego and my home, and you're in suburbs of Philly.
Yep, Westchester.
In your home. And the room that you're in, your office, it's been a while since I've been in that room. And so I keep looking at that framed photo behind you or image, and I remember seeing it years ago, but it's been a while since I've looked at it. So what is that exactly? Where is that?
It's possible you've even been there before. That is Monument Valley.
So I was just going to say it's Monument, yeah,
Utah and Arizona. So I was actually there a couple years ago. Remember that time I stayed on the Navajo land in the yurt?
Yes.
Yeah, that was it.
Oh, that sounds amazing right now. Any travel sounds amazing right now, frankly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I just want to take a look at who our participants are as far as attendees. And, Dan Hopkins, so good to see you. Lots and lots of Entech folks on the list. I miss you all dearly. I could give you big hugs, I would. I wish there was a way. Dave Stolzfus, he is with one of my favorite painters, I.K. Stolzfus. Good to see you. Jeff Euclid, oh my God, the president of Entech is on the line with us.
Entech representing.
Lynette Wells, who has a very interesting blog that will be coming out very, very soon about some of the training she recently had on coaching, so that's phenomenal. Oh, my buddy Mark Manizak, love him for he keeps me, he takes care of our clients. He's our structural engineer, so he makes sure I don't do things I shouldn't.
That's very important.
Steve Riley, one of my favorite coworkers. Oh, and also we not only reached out to people through the Professional Engineering Society, but all the Entech people, to clients, even friends across the country. So one of my good friends, Patty's on the line. And
Patty.
My sister knows Patty. She works for PennDOT out of Harrisburg. So very, very good to see you here today as well. So, you know what? Talking about my background, I know your apartment. You've got bookshelves everywhere. I always love looking through them. But I don't know where you are right now. Where are you?
As you can probably tell, this is not a virtual background, but it's not a real background. So as somebody who is a public speaker as well, and I'll introduce myself in a moment, but I've done a lot of video work over the years. I have clients that I do online sessions with. And so this is my pretending, my whole, my website is Dr. Jen's Den. My video page is in the den with Dr. Jen. So this is it, you are in Dr. Jen's den. And this is my way of being like, oh, what's that? Oh, is that my book on the bottom shelf down there? So I can make it whatever I want as long as I reach off camera here. So.
Yeah, and just a reminder, we'll be getting started, and there's a bunch of people who signed up to attend, so we just want to give them a few minutes to sign in. I'm hoping at this point, all of you guys, well, I know if you're with Entech, you've been using Zoom on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But if not, just familiarize yourself with, use your cursor, move around. We will be using the Q&A feature throughout this, so if you've got questions as we go along, hit that, send them in, or you can wait till the end. Also, there's some other features I'll explain in a few minutes, but and if for some reason like you can't mess anything up, so just play with it, move stuff around. And if you've upgraded Zoom, they keep sending new releases. The latest one has some really cool features. I don't know have you tried them out yet, Jennifer?
I don't think so.
Okay,
although
I'll be explaining one, and you'll be like, oh, really? You can do that.
Oh, excellent. Good. I've got a pen ready. I'm going to take notes during your talk as well. If folks are having any tech issues at all, feel free to use the chat on the bottom and message me. Dr. Jen Gonzalez, or you can message everybody, but you can private message me and I can help you with anything. But otherwise, you can move, if you're not that familiar with Zoom, you can move your mouse or your finger to the top and you can view, you could change your view of what you're looking at, but you probably want to keep it in the view that we have it in. Yeah, you can find your volume buttons, all sorts of stuff. The Q&A on the bottom, I see somebody, it says that chat is disabled, only Q&A.
Oh, yep, okay, yep.
Okay, yes, I did not know that. So don't chat me, Q&A me if you have tech issues also. So,
yeah, so the cool thing is Zoom is, some people have used it for a long time, and I am thrilled. Today is the first webinar that I know of that NTech has ever done via Zoom. So we've practiced a lot. We think we're ready and we can give you guys some really good content, some very useful information, and you learn from us. As we learn things along the way, you will be learning too.
Well, and I will say, as we're diving in here, tech is always tricky, and there's always unexpected things that happen, and that's part of what it is to be a public speaker, to be able to roll with things like this and plan for everything and have backup plans. So, ready to dive in, team?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So I did a brief introduction of myself, but I'm Dr. Jen Gonzalez. I am Christine's little sister. And I live in San Diego, California, and we are both public speakers, but in very different fields. You'll be learning a bit more about her field, although this talk is in general for folks that are doing presentations, not just folks in engineering. I am a sociologist with a specialty in sexual health, intimacy, relationships, and healthy communication. And I have a private practice where I work with individuals and couples, and I travel around the country as a public speaker, speaking to college students and adult groups around these topics. So a little housekeeping as we're diving in here. Set your phones aside if you can for this, about 55 minutes for this talk, and we'll have a few minutes for questions at the end. There's interesting research that shows that even having a cell phone out, even if it's not on and not dinging with notifications, it still distracts you because it reminds you of everything that's happening out there that you're missing, like the FOMO. So just tuck it away. Give yourself a break for the next hour. This is, like I said, about 55 minutes long. We'll have some questions you can write in the Q&A at any point if you want, and then Teen will field questions. Should I call you Christine or Teen? We call you Teen as family and friends, and I realize that's my default, but I guess I should refer to you as Christine.
Yes, please.
Or the Tanky Queen. And so, yeah, so feel free to write your questions. If you need a bathroom, I don't know, it's down the hall, wherever you are. I can't direct you there. I realize it's always part of my housekeeping, bathrooms. I was like, I don't know where your bathroom is. Let's see what else. Well, there will be a chance to stretch in the middle. So, which is good. So you'll get a little movement during that. And if you'd like one PDH at the end of the webinar, please email Matt Boggs at NTech, the one who sent you the invitation to join this webinar. And he'll be able to get you that certificate next week. So anything I missed there, Teen?
Nope, I think we're good.
Awesome. So now I get to introduce our speaker. This is fun. I don't know if I've ever introduced my sister as a speaker before. This is so great. So you might have heard that she's called the Storage Tank Queen. And you might wonder, how does one earn such a title? So after earning 2 engineering degrees from Drexel University, she's got props, Christine Gonzalez entered the tank industry 26 years ago when her grandfather and my grandfather, Raymond, got her an interview at Fisher Tank Company, where he had been the company's first shop foreman. Christine spent 11 years at Fisher learning all aspects of tank design, construction, repairs, and first heard the whispers of Tank Queen. Then she moved into tank inspections, plus began presenting on tanks and coatings at conferences. She's got t-shirts for her Tank Queen world tour. And she's presented around the country. So she currently helps NTech Engineering's clients care for their water and their wastewater tanks. I loved the props. I turn it over to you, Christine.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank God for a good moderator like my sister. You can't do these without someone like that. So do you know what? Before we get started, I would love feedback from our audience. What is your experience with public speaking? So we've got actually 3 polls today that we'll be shooting out. So Jennifer, can you load up the first one for our audience?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's 4 different options from the top, having very little experience, to the bottom that you regularly present. And you're just looking for, a few tips and tools for your toolbox to enhance the presentations that you give on a regular basis. So we'll give you a few more seconds, and if you could vote, that'd be great. So I'm curious, for these polls, Jennifer, do you see like what percentage of people have responded so far?
I do. This is my first time running a poll. I've only ever been on the other side. And so
Okay.
we have 37 out of 39 people. 94% of people have voted in 40 seconds. That's pretty
Okay.
efficient. So I think we will end the poll,
Cool.
and I'll share the results with you.
Okay. Oh, good. Okay. So no one's never presented. So that's great. But it looks like we've got a big mix there. So you've done a few, you often and regularly present. So that's great, because today's talk, I'm actually covering a broad spectrum of these, of things that can help you no matter what level you feel you're at when it comes to public speaking. So to get started, one of the things I'd like to do is I'm going to share my screen with you. So, and something really, really cool, this is one of the things I mentioned, Jen, is in Zoom now, there should be like a break between the photos, or between the cameras that you see of my sister and I and this presentation. You can move that back and forth, so you can actually change the size of the screen that you're seeing for the share screen. So that's a new feature that's pretty cool. You may probably want to make the speaker and the story both the same size. So one of the things I always do when I start a presentation is I tell a story. And for this one, I was thinking, oh, I know, I'll tell a tank story, because everyone loves, well, no, not everyone loves tanks. I've come to realize that. And then I thought, well, perhaps I could, everyone can remember this. Remember the first time you ever presented in front of a group? And for me, it was 6th grade. You know what, I'm going to take this off. It is a formal occasion, but okay. So 6th grade, and I remember I was talking about Modest Mussorgsky. He's a Russian composer. I had my note cards. I memorized as much as I could, and I'd read that you should look at your audience. There's eye contact. Eye contact is very important. I also remember being very nervous and how hard it was, and I'm sure you can all remember how difficult it was the very first time you ever presented. So the most important thing to keep in mind, what I want you to really remember today, is it's all about your audience. Whatever stories you tell, you should always be considering your audience. Who are they? What do they care about? What's important to them? What will help them, and what will inspire them? So everything you do to craft your whole presentation should all be based on what your audience cares about. Not what you care about, not what you want to talk about, but what's important to them. Since the beginning of time, we've always shared stories. Before written history, there was always the oral history, the oral tradition, people sharing stories, sharing morals, sharing family history, and we're actually hardwired to remember stories. So if you can tie a story to whatever you're selling or discussing or trying to change people's minds, story is what's going to resonate with them, connect with them, and that's what they'll remember. So you're more likely to be able to get some camaraderie and a connection with them that way. So delight your audience, educate and entertain them, don't irritate them, and tell stories, lots of stories. You may be thinking, oh God, Christine, I mean, you've been doing this for 25 years. You've got thousands of tank pictures and tons of stories. But here's the thing, even if you work with data all the time and spreadsheets, and you're like, there's no story here. No, there is. What's the overarching story? Why is this important? Why is this being done? How can you connect it with your audience? So there's always a story there. An overview of what we'll cover today. We'll go into the psychological aspects of public speaking, body language, slides, the room, and this is something new I just added, a webinar. I'm sure you've been sitting in on lots and lots of webinars lately. I have too, and I've seen one good one. So the awesome thing is lots of really good tips, and I'll even, if you're interested, I can get you a connection to that, a link to that webinar. It was really, really worthwhile and interesting. So let's start off, psychological aspects of public speaking. How many of you guys have heard that people's number one fear is public speaking? I know growing up, that's what I always heard. Okay, yep, yeah. So that's what I thought was true. I used the Google. Turns out it's not really. People's number one fear actually is financial security, job security, health, their own health. For some people, it may be public speaking, but it's not for everyone. So I thought that was important to recognize. That's not the number one fear. But think about this. What lens do you see your audience through? When you're presenting, do you look out, is this the crowd that you see? Is this what you think they're all out to get you? And it's scary. I mean, I wouldn't want to present in front of a group like that. That'd be tough. So is the lens that you're using, are you thinking I'm a fake, they'll laugh, they hate me, they don't care? Or is it possible that you'd see them through a different lens? Could you see them this way? Oh my God, look, they're so excited to see me. They want to hear from me. Oh, this looks like a great crowd, and they want me to succeed. They're interested, they want to learn, they believe in me, they like me. What if you could see your crowd through these rose-colored glasses? It could totally change your experience. So keep in mind, it's not only the stories that you're sharing with your audience, what story are you telling yourself? But I get it. I mean, to have the spotlight shining on you, all attention focused on you, everyone looking and watching for mistakes, it's hard. So this entire presentation is based on assuming that you want to speak. I'm assuming that you want to present. I'll never forget, there was a conference in New Jersey, Atlantic City, many, many years ago, and I pitched it to the association. I got my boss and I accepted. We were both presenting in the afternoon, and I remember I practiced, I was ready, I was excited, but I see my boss in a corner, holed up in the corner of the casino where our trade show was, and I'm like, are you okay? And this was like an hour before our talk. And he was looking at his computer, he's talking to himself, and he said, well, I'm really nervous. And I said, oh, I didn't, and he's like, yeah, I get stage fright. I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea. If I had any idea he didn't want to speak, he hated it, I would have never signed him up. Or if I'd even known a week beforehand, I would have given the talk. So I just felt so bad. And then he said, yeah, I haven't eaten anything all day. I'm afraid I'm going to throw up. So that's how bad it was. And that's not what you want from your speakers. So lesson learned, I never had him present again. Because here's the thing, he's really good at all these other things. He doesn't have to present. And he's lucky, he's got a very, he's got a coworker who loves to talk. So it's a great team. So he lets his coworker, the other principal at their firm, take care of all the public speaking, and it works out very well for them. So I'm assuming you want to speak, and if you're really uncomfortable, find someone else to give it. You may consider trying therapy. I mean, if these are deep-seated issues and you struggle to have your voice heard, you may need to do a lot of self-work, but it can be really, really worthwhile, because consider, when it comes to speaking, it's not just presentations. You're speaking at work, at meetings with your boss, in front of clients, organizations you're a member of or leading. You want to get your voice heard. And if you struggle, this could be very helpful. There's also organizations, Postmasters, Dale Carnegie, they can help with presenting, where it's very low stakes, so you can get used to it and improve your skills. And team with a coworker. I love this idea where someone who regularly presents at your firm, team up with them and say, hey, I'd love to get better at this. Can I give like 5 minutes of that talk? Or if they're meeting with a client, can I present on this one part of the design? So you get your feet wet, and ideally they'll help guide you, they'll give you some guidance, and really help you to groom you to become a much better speaker. Other tips, Well, consider this. How many people know your topic? It's likely that, well, if you're speaking on it, no one, and even if there are experts in the room, social norms are that they're not going to say anything. They're not going to ask you really hard questions and make you look bad, because that actually makes them look bad. So share your topic. The people there, they want to learn from you. Some people are always afraid at the end of their talk that someone may ask questions that they have no idea. They don't know the answer. So here's two things I regularly do. I don't know, but you know what? My boss, Brian Killian, he is here at this conference. Stop by our booth, come to the trade show hall. He'll be here this afternoon. He would love to talk to you. Give me your card right now, and please stop by. He loves I&I. He's a fabulous designer for that, and he really understands it in and out, and he would love to help you. Or, I don't know, but Dan Knight, you know what? He's with CB&I. He's been building tanks for 30 years. Dan, what's your experience when it comes to antennas on tanks? So I'll routinely use the room to help me answer questions. If there's other experts there, I love sharing the spotlight. And bottom line is, you're helping people who have questions. And that's the best you can do. And that's what they're looking for. That's what they want. Practice, practice, practice. You'll notice I have that there 3 times. And that's because when I started doing this on a regular basis, I would always, the night before a talk, I'd hole up in my hotel room, and I'd have my computer screen out, I'd have my clicker out, I'd have my red dot thingy, what's that called, laser pointer, and I would go through the presentation 3 times. First time, checking to make sure, does the flow seem right? Do the slides make sense? Is the order right? Is there's this arc to the story for the whole presentation? Writing down notes. If there was a word I couldn't remember, a person's name, a funny coding, I would write it down on a piece of paper so I'd have it there with me and I could glance down at it during my talk. And by the final time, I was like, okay. Oh, and also checking time, making sure that it was the right time and cutting out. I always have to cut out slides because there's a lot of tank stories I like to share. So practice, practice, practice. So important and so valuable. And as I said, it's a guideline for if you're just starting to give presentations. I mean, 3 times worked for me, and maybe something totally different for you. So you've got to see what makes sense. Brainstorm with a speaker that you admire. So my person is, well, you see her here on the screen. Her name is Jen Gonzalez. And, this may go back to college for us when we probably first started presenting a lot. And I know routinely we'll get together and actually, well, she helped me with this presentation, just with the setup and everything and proofreading the slides. But routinely she'll say, hey, I'm giving this talk on this topic. This is the audience. This is what I'm explaining, and how can I draw them in? And we'll kick around ideas and brainstorm and be creative about, okay, how do we get the audience engaged from the get-go? What ideas are there? And it's fun. It's fun if you're working with someone who's really good at this. Other tips for body language? Well, we're switching over to body language now, so smile. And actually, here's a little tip. Look, I got a little sign that says smile as well, just a little reminder. It makes you more approachable. It helps you engage with your audience. They'll want to pay attention to you. Makes you prettier too. Speak to your audience. I mean, we've all seen presenters who do this, and you may not even be able to hear me very well right now, but you're seeing the back of their head the whole time and they're reading the screen. Please don't do that. Please, you're just totally alienating your audience. But where do you look? I remember when I started doing this that I would look at the top of people's heads, or I heard, no, look at the back of the room. And what happened was, over time, I got to the point where I was feeling comfortable. I was feeling good with the audience, and actually started looking in their faces and really engaging with them there. And what I realized was I could get immediate feedback. I could see, is what I'm saying, is it resonating with them? Are they understanding this? I often ask questions, have them raise their hands. So giving a talk, it's a dance. It's a dance between you and your audience. And when it's going well, it's magical. It's magical, the exchange of ideas, the feedback, and there's nothing like it. So there was actually a conference last fall where one guy in the audience, I knew him ahead of time. He's like, oh, I'm excited for your talk. And during it, I looked and I realized his eyes were closed. Like, at first I'm thinking, am I boring? Everyone else was paying attention. Because here's the thing, if you lose your audience, skip ahead. Skip ahead to a slide that resonates more with them. Obviously, whatever you're talking about isn't important, so find something that is, or move around, or just change things up a little bit to catch their attention. But this guy who had his eyes closed, I'm thinking, first I was like, did he really want to be here? But then I looked at him, well, with a new lens, a lens of compassion. And I thought, maybe he had a really rough night. He's an operator. Maybe he had to work late and this morning, and maybe he's just tired. Maybe there's something going on with his family. I don't know. All I know is he wanted to be here. He is. And you know what? A few minutes later, he opened up his eyes. He's right back there. He's with us. And so remember, it's not you. It's not always about you. So just something to keep in mind there when it comes to looking at your audience and the eye contact. Another thing to consider is, well, just act natural. And you may be thinking, sure, well, what's natural with 500 people looking at me in a spotlight? Because, like, do you move around? What do you do with your hands? It's really hard. And well, think of it this way. What do you do when you're at a cocktail party? When you're hanging out with your friends? How do you move? You're not pacing back and forth in front of the room. You're just hanging out. If you can channel that energy and that body motion, and hopefully you can get to the point where public speaking is natural. Like, that's what it feels like to me. I mean, I'm hanging out with all my friends right now. I can't be with you. I can't give you big hugs, but we're hanging out right now and sharing stories and information. So as much as it's possible, try to act natural when you're up there. And if not, fake it. If you're like me and my sister, you grew up with Wonder Woman. In fact, hey, you want to pull them out? Yep, yeah. We got our Wonder Woman mugs.
Cheers.
Cheers, yes. So she's powerful. We admire her. Channel her or someone else you admire, someone else you think is a really good speaker. Imagine that you're them. Fake it till you make it. In fact, when it comes to channeling strength, this is a little sidebar, but I had a friend years ago who I was talking to on the phone, and she was getting ready for a first date with this guy. And I remember she looked out the window and she's like, oh my God, he's here. And she's like, oh my God, he saw me. He saw me looking out the window. And then she's like, hold on a second. I hear funny noises. I'm like, what is that? She gets back on the phone. She's like, okay, I just did 10 push-ups. 10 push-ups. I feel ready. I feel strong. I am ready for this date. I mean, that's what some actors do, some musicians. They have this prep thing that they do to get into whatever state they want to be in to be ready for their talk. So try different things out. See what works for you. When you're giving a presentation, there's certain things you should never say. And at the beginning of the presentation, never say, as Jennifer said, my name is Christine Gonzalez. I'm a project manager here at NTech, because she already said that. So you don't need to repeat yourself. Let me tell you all about NTech engineering. And then you go on a sales spiel. Here's the thing, the audience is there to learn from you about the topic of your talk, not for you to sell to them. I always get nervous in front of an audience. Well, here's the thing, as an audience member, I'm going to be watching you carefully to see if your words waver, if you're shaken. Don't show your cards. Fake it till you make it. I didn't have enough time to prepare. Well, actually what that means is you didn't make time to prepare. And now I'm wondering, well, is this presentation going to be any good or not? I was forced to give this talk. Oh, you're also sort of alienating your audience there as well. I'm not sure if this video will work or not. Okay, pro tip, don't use videos. I've used them 3 times. Twice they worked, once they didn't. And the time it didn't, I did have a backup way of conveying the information. So it's always You never know if they will work or not. But here's the thing. If you are using one, make sure you have tried it ahead of time on the laptop being used there at the event. Make sure it works right there, and Wi-Fi is always iffy. You probably can't read this. I'm sure you all thought that and heard that from presenters. And I know I always think to myself, well, then why didn't you change your slide? Why didn't you make the print bigger? If it's a graph, why didn't you make it so we could read it? Or just summarize it. Don't show the graph, but what's it mean? What's the message you're trying to get through to us? Because right now, Excel spreadsheets for stuff like this. I'm like, why are they showing me an Excel spreadsheet? I can't read those tiny numbers. And it doesn't really matter. So find a different way to convey that information so you're not bothering your audience. And then when you wrap things up, that's all I got. It's sort of awkward. I hope no one has any questions. Then as an audience member, I'm thinking, oh, I did. Now what do I do? And then, thank you. Running away, because keep in mind, we've all been to presentations. There's like a sequence of events. You know, at the end, normally the presenter will say, are there any questions? They'll do a Q&A. The moderator will get up and thank you. There's applause. Like, that's the normal way of doing it. And if you do things differently, the audience, they're left, it's a little unsettling. And you don't want to leave the audience that way. You want to leave them thinking that you did a wonderful job and that they were glad they spent their time with you. So delight your audience. Okay, next topic with the slides, show, don't tell. Okay, so I want you to imagine a water storage tank. It's 300,000 gallons, 30-foot diameter, 30-foot high. It's got a flat bottom. It's made of welded steel. It's got a shell, and it had a leak. It had a leak where the shell and the bottom met at that corner. And we were trying to figure out, well, is it just the corner bottom? The steel was very, very thin right there. Is it just there at the corner where the steel's bad, or is more of the bottom shot and needs to be replaced? So I said, you know what? You can cut coupons, cut steel plates out of the bottom of the tank. And we can flip them over, and now we can see the underside of the bottom to see is there corrosion or not. So right now in your mind, you're thinking of something. But what if instead I showed you a picture? So this is what the coupons look like. And right now we're seeing the top side. That's the coating that was on the inside of the water tank. You can see the thickness of the steel looks pretty good there. Flip it over, you can see the bottom there. And look, we've even got a pen, so that's showing scale. But what if I did this, something even better? What if I showed you the coupon? I have all sorts of wonderful pictures here in my office. So, and walked around so you could really get a sense of scale and see that, okay, there's some corrosion going on there, not so much, quarter inch, that's the bottom started with. This is a 40-year-old tank. You know what, that bottom is in really, really good shape. And it's also very dirty. So I remembered a damp rag, so that's good. But it speaks to the power of photos, but also show, don't tell, and if possible, to do it where gather up props like that. So show, don't tell, because 87% of communication is visual. So that means only 13% of the words get through, but communication with pictures and your body and everything else that they're seeing, that's where you get through with them. I pulled this slide off of an engineer's website. It was, for a sample PowerPoint slide. And when I saw it, I thought, uh-oh. And the lesson here is bigger is better. When I look at this, I see, okay, these photos, they are really, really tiny. I can't really see what's going on there. There's captions underneath them. I don't know if you can see that or not. The font is tiny and light gray. This might be really good in a brochure, but on a slide, maybe even a poster, it's hard to read. The project highlights, well, it's 16-point font, also very hard to read. What if instead, use a whole screen? I love this. Make the photo as big as possible so it's very clear what you're showing. Oh, and use high quality photos. This I just cut and pasted from the previous slide. Keep in mind, if you want to use the entire screen, watch out when you're stretching things, because you'll see here, like this chair doesn't look quite right. So it's like, wait, what's going on there? And that's because if you stretch from the corners, you'll maintain that length to height ratio. If you stretch from the ends, this happens. Granted, if you want to make yourself skinnier, pull from the top and bottom, and you can look quite thin. So pro tip. But keep in mind, like if you see this photo, saw a photo like this, it'd be like when you're talking to someone and they're talking to you and you're like, did they have plastic surgery? Is there something with their eyes, like the jaw? And you're supposed to be paying attention to them, but you can't because you're distracted the whole time wondering what sort of work did they have done? Well, that's the same thing with these photos. It's a little distracting to your audience, so they're not getting your whole message. There, length to height ratio. If you saw this, would you think, I've never seen coins like that? Oh, okay, yeah, that's much, much better. I feel better. And maybe it's because I'm a type A personality, but that's the way to do it. Stretch it from the corners. Finally, with photos, you always hear they're worth 1,000 words. So I'll never forget, this had to be like 15 years ago. And it was the Friday before Memorial Day weekend. And my old coworker, Kevin, he was in charge of tank inspections. He was down the Jersey Shore inspecting a tank, and he called back to the office like around 1 o'clock or so. And he's like, hey, just so you know, if anyone is going down to so-and-so town, I'm not going to name names, don't drink the water. And I'm like, well, I don't understand. What do you mean don't drink the water? And he explained that a year before, the tank had been repainted inside and out, but up on the roof of the tank, there were these openings, like 8-inch diameter, and there's a bunch of them. The painter had never put screens back on those openings. And there was also screening missing from the vents. So over the past year, pigeons and seagulls and birds had gotten inside, they built nests, they had died, there was feathers everywhere, and you're just seeing the surface. This is the top water surface of the tank there with all the dirt. Kevin said when he dropped the ROV, the remotely operated vehicle, down into the water and got to the bottom of the tank, there was about 8 inches of bird poop. Drinking water. This is a drinking water tank. People were drinking this. Blech. So needless to say, the owner took the tank offline, drained it, cleaned it out, got it back in service. Oh, but my God, I mean, you can see it stuck with me, the story, the importance of this. And when other people hear this story, they also think, oh my God, I don't want that to happen to me and my tanks. We've got to inspect these. We've got to be inspecting these tanks and checking those screens every year, if not more often. I don't want this to happen to my tank. So that's the joy of marrying a really powerful story with a really great photo. People will remember it. It will resonate with them, and they're not going to forget it. Okay, now this is the not really 7th inning stretch, but we're going to do a little stretch right now. So everyone stand up, and I need you to go away from your computer about 6 or 8 feet. Come on back. Okay. And so take a look at the slide, and can you read this? 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 This is really powerful because well, let me come on back up. So take a look and see, okay, which one can you read with no problem, no effort, is really, really easy to read. And here's the different points, the sizes, font sizes. Jennifer, actually, we've got a poll for this one as well. If you can load up the poll for everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
And keep in mind, we're not at the eye doctor. So don't, impress us that, oh, I could read the 12-point, no problem. What was comfortable? What was effortless for you when you were standing far back? And if you didn't get up, then lean back as far as you can in your chair and squint a little bit and see what looks reasonable. Oh, and I apologize. If you really like the 60-point fonts, I'm sorry, I didn't put that up there as an option. So how are we doing with people taking the survey, Jennifer?
We're at 70%.
Okay, we'll give you a few more seconds.
Got 3/4 of folks have weighed in, and we've got a few more coming in. Almost everybody has voted at this point. We'll give you 5 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Great, we got most folks here. All right, we're going to end the poll. And there are our results.
Okay. So looks like the majority was at a 32 point, actually 24, 32 point. Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much for that feedback. And I hope this is one of the favorite slides I've ever done in a presentation, because it really shows you something. And that is 24 point, 32 point. That's what you need on your slides. It's huge. If you're not used to it, it is huge. I mean, you may be thinking, for God's sake, Christine, 32 point, I can put like 10 words on my slide. How am I going to fit all the words on my slide? Well, you're not supposed to fit everything you're saying on your slide. The slide is supposed to be key points, elements that you want your audience to remember, not everything you're saying. So actually, the cool thing about using 32 point is it limits you. Really helps limit what you actually put on your slides. With font type, keep in mind fonts have feelings, and the names of the fonts are often indicative of what the feelings are. So the third one down, Comic Sans, it's sort of fun and joking. You wouldn't use that in a serious business letter. Script, gorgeous for wedding invitations and being pretty and flowery. Impact, I routinely use impact when I want to make a point, make a statement, be bold, but I don't use it for the entire presentation. In fact, for presentations, you want the words to just sort of be there and not have a feeling, simply convey the words, the message of the words themselves. So this whole presentation, I've used Calibri. Others routinely use Arial, also known as Helvetica, and you can look at those fonts. They're very simple, so the message of the words will shine through. Other tips for your slides, use the same font throughout. I'm sure you've noticed occasionally you'll see someone who's got like 7 fonts on one slide and you're like, oh, look at them. They're practicing using all the fonts that they think are pretty, but it's distracting and it makes it harder to read and understand the slide. Don't use all caps. And you know this from emails because it's like someone's yelling at you. Left justify, and that's because we read English from left to right. Make it simple for your audience. Add shadow to make words pop. So take a look at the top of this slide right now where it says number 3 and the slides and the tips. Right now, I just added shadow. There I take away, there I add it. What shadow does is, while this whole presentation is in 2D, gives it a 3-dimensional element and it helps things pop. So when you want to draw attention to something, you can use that. Actually, my sister sent me an ad for a webinar she's giving in the next week or so. And she's like, what do you think? I said, oh, it's gorgeous. It's simple. There was a glass of wine, a few words. I said, but add shadow for the title and add shadow at the bottom for some of the elements down there. And she's like, huh. And then I get an email back from her and she's like, oh my God, it looks great. And she's like, look. So I looked and it's like night and day. So those things you want to emphasize, use shadow to make those words pop. So pro tip, now you guys know how to do it as well. 5 and 5. With the slides, I recommend 5 lines and 5 words in each line, a guideline. And I don't follow that exactly. It just helps to limit how much is on your screen and it gives you white space. So there's breathing space and you're not cramming too much information in your audience, at your audience at once. Oh, look, I just broke my own rule. There's a 6th bullet there. You'll notice throughout this presentation though, when there's bullets, I go one by one by one, and that's because people read 3 times as fast as you can speak. And often with these topics, well, I don't just read those words, I'll say stuff about them. Once again, it's a dance we're doing. You want to lead your audience with you, have them stay with you with the words, with what you're saying, with the stories. Do the bullets one by one, and you'll notice a lot more engagement. And have someone review it. Last night, my sister reviewed this for me. I'm like, hey, make sure it's all spelled right and I'm using the words correctly. If you've got someone in your office who's really good at PowerPoint, have them clean it up for you and make sure your photos do look normal and they are taking up the whole page and that you do have these bullets and they are going one by one. can really improve your presentation. Also with visibility, keep in mind the contrast. When we're reading letters, books, we're used to white background, black words. That's the norm. That's what we know very well. If you change that, you use very light colors or like yellow, light blue, it is hard to read. So make it easy for your audience. And if you think, oh, let me try dark backgrounds, but I'll use, white lettering because there's really good contrast there. It's hard. We're not used to that. So use it sparingly, especially the color red. I always feel like the color red can vibrate. So I am using it here for the titles at the top. But when it comes to content, red can be very hard to read. And also psychologically, it means stop, or there's an emergency of some sort. So keep in mind what the color or what the connotation of the color really is. Oh, there's a couple books I would highly recommend. If you're enjoying this and you're into the design elements and you want to learn more and the psychological stuff behind it all, Robin Williams has this 4th edition of the Non-Designer's Design Book. I've got, well, this says deluxe edition, so I've got one. My sister, you have this one, right? Okay. And our marketing guy, Steve Wagner, he's got one. And what I love about it is gives you all sorts of guidance behind. Well, what I love is when it tells you there's one way of doing it, and then oh, there's another way of doing it. So that contrast, that it's okay, but here's how to make it even better. Really, really cool and helpful. So tons of the stuff I'm talking about today, this just touches the tip of it. Way, way more. And also presentation design, Garth Reynolds, phenomenal books as well to help clean up your slides. So with the room, what can you control? Well, see the room before you talk. You can actually move things around. You can, there was a talk I gave up in New York, Saratoga Springs, many years ago. And when I got there the day before, I checked it out to make sure I knew my space. And in the corner was the screen. In the center, there was a raised podium, a raised platform and a podium. And then the audience, it was actually a really long room. But what I realized was I was standing in the middle. People in the first couple rows on the side, they wouldn't be able to see, they can't see the screen. And here's the thing. My talks, they're pictures, lots and lots of pictures. So I actually sat my briefcase, my coat, my sweater, a cup, a bunch of stuff on the seats there so people wouldn't sit in them. So I wanted to enhance their viewing of this. So I blocked those seats off. You can do that. You can do that. You can change things in the room if you want. That room also was very long. So, and if you go to seminars, people usually start filling in at the very back. And I knew a couple of guys in the back rows. So right before my talk, I got up and I'm like, hey, I have a big favor to ask you. Would you mind come up a few rows? So much of my talk is on the screen as pictures. I don't want you to miss it, and you'll really get a lot more out of it. Come forward. And then they did, and they enjoyed it much better. You can do that. You've got that power when it comes to being in the room and setting things up. Practice in the room. Get a sense of your body and the space and where things are and what it sounds like. Load and review the presentation before you talk. So important. First talk I ever gave down in Atlantic City at a tent conference, I had practiced one presentation, and when I started, by the 4th slide, it wasn't the slide I thought was coming up next. They submitted one talk and gave me another one to practice with, my office. So big mistake. And all I could think was, I'm flying blind here. I have no idea what's coming up next. So always make sure the presentation on the computer being used is your presentation, and then everything works. Watch for that Mac versus PC change in formatting. That can be a pain in the butt. So learn from my mistakes. Use the mic. Always use the mic. Otherwise, you're shouting to the people at the front of the room. Team up with your moderator. Arrive early. Make sure they can pronounce your name. Help you with lighting. They'll close the door. Keep noise out. 5-minute warning. It can be really helpful. And then there's speaker tools. These are things that my sister and I talked about recently where, well, do you want to explain what this photo is right here?
I love that you include this photo in your talk. So my first book was published last August. And, you know, I was on a book tour for some of that time. And in October, I did a Philly book tour and was in different locations. And this is after a reading that I did at Reeds and Company in Phoenixville, outside Philadelphia, when folks were lining up for their signing. So I love your behind the scenes photo of me here.
Yeah, so speaker tools, things that my sister and I always have when we are presenting: laptop, power cords, a talk on the thumb drive. We've got notes, water bottle, nothing worse than having a dry throat or coughing partway through a talk. A clock, it's much better than trying to pull your cell phone up, hitting the button to see what time it is and where you are time-wise. A pointer with the clicker. I'll never forget Ed Petrosky from our office. He helped me out with this. And because they didn't have one in the room, and it's so much easier to be able to walk around with a pointer and a clicker. And afterwards, I'm like, I want one of those. $10 on Amazon. Highly recommend it. Oh, pro tip: take the battery out when you're storing it, because it can flip on, and then you drain the battery, and then you don't have a clicker. So yeah, keep that in mind. But having your own is phenomenal. Business cards, people always ask for those. Props, my sister, she has her mindfulness bell. I've got, you know, pieces of tank all over the place. Oh God, that's pretty. The last thing we want to cover is a few minutes on webinars. And I'd mentioned I saw one recently, and this was the Timmons Group. It's an engineering firm out of Virginia. Their talk was more about pitching to clients, but it was through a webinar format. And I thought, well, I wonder how they're going to present this. And here's the thing, it was phenomenal. Just all these things, just seeing a webinar in a whole new way that it was presented. So what they recommended was look directly at the camera. And it's something I am not used to at all, but I've tried to do it most of the time with you guys, and I'm still working on it because it makes it look like I'm talking to you. Use a teleprompter. There's apps for that. Jennifer, you just downloaded one for your Mac, right?
Yeah, Mac has one specifically. You can try it out for 2 weeks and then purchase it. It's relatively inexpensive. It has a lot of functionality. So if you are looking for a teleprompter and you have a Mac, that's a first place to start and check at least.
Oh. Plan your background. So you may be thinking, well, Christine, how did you, is this just naturally the way you appear on webinars? No, we've been practicing this the past 2 weekends and trying to figure out, okay, where should my head be? It's good to have that picture in the background. You want to highlight, you know, pieces of your personality. But I definitely didn't want to show you all my filing cabinets. Steve Wagner in our office, he told me they're very 1990. So, and I cleared off my desk. So have a neat, clean background so it's not distracting to your audience. Cool thing that the Timmons Group did was it was their faces almost the whole time. There was 2 co-presenters and you were always seeing their face. And so they were connecting with you that way. And then at the end of each of the segments, they'd have one slide to review the points they were making. And then you go back to their faces. So it's like totally different than what I was used to. I didn't choose to do that here because so much of my presentation is photos and showing you the fonts and that sort of thing. And they also say find ways to connect with your audience. And so 5 minutes before their talk began, they actually were bantering and engaging the audience, starting some Q&A at that point, talking about the stuff in the background of their offices. So it allows your audience to get to know you a little bit ahead of time, allows you to connect with them. They want to know you and then they'll want to listen to you as well. They use polls, raising hands, the Q&A, and they told stories, lots of stories. Finally, they said, make sure you've got a moderator, a good moderator who's done this before and can really take care of everything in the background to keep it running smoothly. So thank you, Jennifer. So in conclusion, top tips. It's all about your audience. Delight them, educate and entertain them. Show, don't tell. And use big, big pictures, or better yet, props, 3-dimensional props. Use 24-point font or larger. I prefer 32. Tell stories, lots of stories. And finally, webinars are a brand new frontier. So keep in mind, if you are a good presenter, this is a whole different format. So there's a lot to be learned. So please check out our website, www.ntecheng.com. I wrote a blog regarding this talk, and there's a recording already there. This was for the talk I gave back in the fall, so it doesn't have that webinar section, but it does have a bunch of pro tips, those books I mentioned, and we will be taking this recording and uploading it within the next week or so. And here's my contact information. If you ever have questions and want to get more information on speaking, I love collaborating with people and very happy to help. So at this point, if there are any questions, please use the Q&A button, and I'm going to turn things over to my sister to wrap things up. So how are we doing time-wise?
We're doing great. We've got 6 minutes left.
Okay.
So nice job timing yourself and practicing ahead of time, so you stayed within your time frame. So far, we've had one question. I definitely want to encourage folks to write any questions in that you have, and we will be doing one final poll as well, just to find out what resonated with you from this talk the most. But so the one question we do have: should we mute our headsets when we go to the bathroom?
Only if you're a Supreme Court justice. But yes, I think we're all learning how important the mute button is. And as a moderator or someone leading these meetings, there's, well, just like, you know, Pages and Word, the different programs, there's shortcuts, you know, control this, control that. There's shortcuts for Zoom. I learned a new one where when I'm, well, I can't use it right now. If you're on mute and you want to take yourself off mute for a moment, hit the space bar. When you're done, let the space bar up and you're back to mute. It's a cool little trick, something so easy, and there's a ton of them. So, and also to mute all the attendees. We're all learning how to do that. So, good question.
That's a great question. Okay, we've got 2 more that have come in. We've got a few more coming in. Can you please repeat the name of the webinar that you were impressed with?
Okay, yeah, it was by the Timmons group. Do you know what? Send me an email and or send Matt Boggs an email. Send us your contact information, and I've got a link. I shared it with my sister. I shared it with a bunch of the marketing people in my office because I was just blown away by it. So yeah, send us an email and I will get you a link so you can take a look at it. Well worth the hour.
Yeah, for sure. Next question. Do you feel it's possible to give a successful webinar without sharing your video? Or perhaps they mean without sharing, you know, slides as well. I'm not quite sure.
I don't know. I'm not sure what the question is.
Well, do you think, well, so I'm just going to morph it. Like, do you think it's okay to give one where you don't have a PowerPoint or anything like that and where you're just talking? That I'm going to perceive that question that way.
You said it's not sharing video?
Oh, you mean just talking audio? Oh, I see.
That's what I'm thinking. I mentioned I saw one good presentation by the Timmons group, and it was almost all their faces, and it blew me away that now, well, I just saw one this afternoon, Sherwin-Williams, the coding people, they put one on, and the whole time I'm like, who's talking to me? Who's talking? Are they gonna show us their faces? We're gonna get to a point where it's expected, and you may not like how you look on the screen, but if you wanna connect with your audience, that's the key.
And that person just clarified, they did mean audio, so thank you. I misinterpreted that. Thank you for getting that correctly, Christine. I would say also people have different learning styles. And so part of, you know, speaking and having people listen to that, and then you have good visuals for them to look at and photos and words to look at. You're engaging and you're moving around and showing things. You're engaging in different teaching styles. Because I know I'm not a very good like audio learner. So just audio, I have trouble to connect and learn with. So I think you're gonna lose a lot of power that way. So next question. How do you feel about animated actions in PowerPoint?
Use them sparingly. Use them only if it really enhances your message. If it's just cute, if you like it, but your audience, you may lose them and they may think you're unprofessional. I don't recommend them at all.
Yeah. Next question. Is PowerPoint still the gold standard in presentation software? Great question.
Excellent question. And actually, one of my coworkers, Jason, posed this to my office a couple weeks ago. And there's some presentation format where it like leads you from a thing to a thing to a thing to a thing to a thing. I've only used PowerPoint and been using it for 20 years, so I'm comfortable with it. I feel like I'm maximizing the value of it. If you're familiar with another presentation format and are really good at it, or whatever your message is, it would be enhanced by that format, then go for it.
I'm looking at our time, team, and I want to make sure we have one final question of what's the best way to gauge that you've effectively connected with your audience. But let's throw up our poll.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we'll do a poll because we know time is scarce and don't want to hold you up. So we would love your feedback. If you could respond to this poll. I want to get a sense of what resonated with you. What sections were most helpful, the 5 different things that I covered today, or were they all? So we'd love to get your feedback for this. That'd be very, very helpful.
Yeah, we'll get your feedback, and then we've got 1 minute left, and you could field that final question. And we will stick around. Christine's going to stick around for a couple minutes afterwards also, if there's any additional questions, if anybody wants to stay on and ask.
Yeah.
So almost everybody has voted at this point. So I'll give it 3 more seconds. 3, 2, 1, end poll. There are results.
Okay.
Yay.
Excellent. I'm very glad that all of them resonated. That makes me feel good.
But the psychological and the slides then were next also.
Cool. So, yeah, and here's the thing. I could speak for an entire day on this, and I know you could too, Jennifer, because there's so much to cover and so much that you learn over time. And here's the thing. When you see a good presentation, think about it. What were they doing? How did they connect with you and perhaps change your mind? And then use that. Use the same tools and techniques.
Yeah, study what works for you. So we are at time here. So we're at 60 minutes. So we get, if you've got family, if you've got other things, if you're on the East Coast and it's happy hour time, it's only 2 o'clock here in San Diego, so I can't pour a drink yet, or at least I shouldn't. So we get if you have to leave, but we will stay here because we have a few more questions that have come in. So if you posted a question, we'll stay here and team will answer that question. So the one I mentioned already is, what is the best way to gauge that you've effectively connected with your audience?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
What's the best way to gauge that you have effectively connected with your audience? Great question.
I base it on if you've had eye contact the whole time, if they're nodding their heads, if you get good body language feedback from them, if they ask questions at the end. My favorite thing is how many people after the talk come up to you and want to either have more questions or just say, hey, can I get your card? Hey, I learned so much. When you get feedback like that, this is the best presentation I've ever seen. I've heard that. It's so flattering. It's so nice, but also makes me feel so good because I want to share as much as I can about tanks and coatings with people so they learn and they understand and they take care of them. So I think there's some tools to know if you've connected with your audience or not.
This next one is a comment, and I think it's in response if somebody was asking, should you just use PowerPoint or the other ones? And you were talking about, there was one, I think it starts with a Q, I forget the name or something, but right, things were swirling around the screen and stuff. So somebody's commenting on that, Ronald is, once I saw a presentation when I thought, wow, how cool, I wonder how they did that. A moment later, I realized I had no idea what they were talking about because I was captivated by the clever stuff on the screen. So, right, you want to make sure it's adding to your presentation, not distracting people.
Oh, I love it.
One more question here. Do you prefer notes on the bottom of slides for your guide or a separate outline outside of the presentation?
And I assume this would be like speaking notes, so things to help prompt me with my talk. I don't know. I haven't used speaker notes on my slides, God, in years. And I'm lucky because I know the content inside and out. As I said, occasionally there's a coding name I don't know or a person's name. And it's during my rehearsal that I realize I don't know it. but I do know some people use speaker notes. Here's the thing, if you're reading, you're not engaging with your audience and it sort of sounds flat. Practice so you don't need the notes. Find a way to tell your story and tell your presentation so you need as few notes as possible. And instead, your notes are on the screen, you know, the highlights that other people can see as well. What's your take on it, Jennifer?
Yeah, I've almost never used speaker notes or, you know, that feature on the laptop in front of me. What I have done is every once in a while there's something in a talk that I'm giving, because I'm always changing my talks for the audience that I'm with. Every once in a while there's something that I'm afraid I am not going to remember, or there's a very specific, say, client story I'm going to share. I will have that on a little note card ready. And if I'm I can't totally remember what this is, or what was that one point that I knew I wanted to make, I'll just grab the card and I'll glance down at it. And if you make it casual and normal and you're confident when you do it, you know, nobody questions it at all. It's just part of your talk. Yeah. So you don't rely on it. But if you're so afraid you're going to forget something, you may be more likely to forget about it, because that anxiety is creating what you're most afraid of. So just have a backup there for you. We've got a couple comments. Thanks, Christine and Jen. Informative, practical, and fun. Great talk. Yay. Thank you, Dave, for that. And we got Jen saying, enjoyed the presentation very much. Thank you for the tip. Was it Prezi that you were thinking of? Yes. Thank you, Jen, for that. It had a Z in it. I was thinking Q. Yes, it was totally Prezi, which popped up a while back, maybe 5 years ago. People started using it, but it ended up being distracting. I actually got motion sick watching people give those presentations sometimes, because there was too much movement on the screen. So that is it. So any final thoughts, team?
Well, I just want to say thank you all, everyone who attended. I would really love to be there live with you in person so we can chat more and go grab a drink. And I'm sorry we can't, but I am thrilled that you want to enhance your presentation skills. And thank you, Jennifer, so much for moderating. Big, big help. I couldn't have done it without you. And so thank you all. And I can't wait till I see you again live and in person. Yay. Okay, so we'll stop the recording. Thank you so much.
Folks. Hang in there.
Ah, yay!
Hold on, still ending.